You see the needle, and the room goes strange. Sound slides backwards, as though somebody moved the nurse 2 rooms away. The light turns thin. Your face goes cold and damp all at once. Your hands stop belonging to you. And the last clear thought you have is a small, embarrassed one. Not this. Not here. Not again. Now notice what your body just chose to do, because it is genuinely strange. Every other fear you own speeds you up. A snake in the brass, a shape in the dark, a car swerving into your lane, and your heart climbs, your blood floods your legs, your whole system gets you ready to move. This one does the exact opposite. This one lowers the lights and shuts the building down. Out of the entire human catalog of fears, this is the only one that reliably ends with you on the floor. And you are quietly ashamed of it, a grown adult, a small piece of steel, and a nurse who does this 400 times a week. You have told yourself you are squeamish, weak-stomached, dramatic. There is a reasonable chance you have skipped a blood test, or delayed a jab, or found some very convincing reason not to donate.
Here is what nobody tells you. Your body is not malfunctioning. It is running one of the oldest emergency routines you own, correctly and on time. And that routine is trying to do something that running away could never do. Stay with this one. By the end, you will know exactly what it is protecting. Start with what fear is supposed to look like. When something frightens you, the standard package fires. Heart rate up, blood pressure up. Blood pushed out of the gut and skin and into the big muscles of the legs and arms. Pupils wide, airways open, sugar dumped into the bloodstream. Every part of that is designed for one job, which is to move you somewhere else very quickly. Now watch what happens with blood and needles instead. The classic description is a fear that arrives in 2 phases. First, the normal spike, exactly like any other fright, heart rate and blood pressure climbing. And then, seconds later, the floor falls out. Heart rate drops, blood pressure drops. For a moment, your brain is not receiving as much blood as it would like, and your body makes an executive decision to put you horizontal before you fall. Researchers argue about how often that full 2-phase pattern actually shows up, and plenty of people with this fear never faint at all. But the drop itself is real, it is well documented, and it is the signature of this fear and no other.
So how common is this? Somewhere in the region of 3 to 4% of people have it strongly enough to count as a phobia, and vastly more have a milder version, the lightheaded edge you get watching a needle go into your own arm. And here is the part that should stop you. Of all the different types of phobia, this one carries the highest average heritability. In surveys of people with a serious fear of needles, the large majority report a first-degree relative with the same thing. Your mother, your father, a sibling who also has to lie down. That is not a habit you picked up from a bad experience at age 6. That is something handed to you. So it is old, which raises an obvious problem. Picture the world your ancestors actually lived in. Blood was not an event. Blood was Tuesday. Every animal that fed the group had to be opened and taken apart by hand. Every birth happened right there, in the open, with everyone within earshot. Children fell, teeth abscessed, hunts went wrong, bone broke through skin and someone had to look at it, hold it, wrap it, and stay calm enough to be useful. There is a skeleton that makes this uncomfortably concrete. In a cave called Shanidar, in the Zagros mountains of what is now Iraqi Kurdistan, archaeologists recovered the remains of a Neanderthal man, a close cousin of yours, who died somewhere between 35 and 50 years old. Look at what he carried, a crushing blow to the left side of his face, which almost certainly cost him the sight in that eye, a right arm that was damaged and withered and ended above where a hand should be, a deformed leg and foot that would have given him a painful limp, probable hearing loss. Now look at the detail that matters more than any of the injuries. They had healed. All of them. He survived those wounds by years, in a landscape with no bandages, no antiseptic, no stitches, and no painkillers, which means, for years, somebody fed him, moved him, and dealt with what came out of him. Somebody looked at all of that and did not faint. So your ancestors were not squeamish, because they could not afford to be, which makes your quiet collapse in a Clement chair look even stranger. Why would a species that lived elbow-deep in blood come equipped with a body that switches itself off at the sight of it? Here is where it turns over. Because fainting may not be the failure in this story. It may be the feature. There is a long-standing idea that dropping your blood pressure is exactly what a wounded body wants. Lower pressure means slower bleeding. If you have been opened up, a system that briefly drops you flat and turns the tap down is not being cowardly, it is buying time for a clot. That idea is a hypothesis rather than a settled fact, and it has never been easy to test, but it is not silly. The second idea is stranger and reaches further back. In a paper published in the journal CNS Spectrums, the psychiatrist Stefan Braca argued that the classic list of fear responses is incomplete, not fight or flight, but a sequence. Freeze first because stillness is invisible, then flight if there is anywhere to run, then fight if there is not, then fright, the rigid tonic immobility that many animals drop into when they are caught, and finally, faint, the last card in the deck, played when there is no escape and no chance of winning. His argument goes further than that. He proposed that this last response was shaped less by animal predators and more by other humans, during a long stretch of the Paleolithic in which the most dangerous thing in the landscape was a group of people with sharpened stone. Against a leopard, going limp is useless. Against armed strangers, being small, still, silent, and apparently already finished is not obviously a losing move, and it is the least useless thing a child can do. It is a hypothesis. It is argued about. Nobody has a Paleolithic body to hook up to a heart monitor. But look at the shape of your own reaction and see how well it fits. It is not the color red that drops you. Paint does not do it. Ketchup does not do it. What does it is a needle going through skin, a wound held open, a cut on your own hand, the specific and unmistakable news that a body has been breached. Your system is not reacting to a shade. It is reacting to a category. Now come back to the chair. Everything about that ancient routine assumed one thing, which is that blood in your field of view meant danger was extremely close. Something had teeth. Someone had a weapon. Something had gone badly wrong within a few meters of you, and your body chose the response for a world in which that was almost always true.
Look at where you actually are. A clean room with a fluorescent light, a stranger in gloves who is being kind to you, a sterile package, a plaster and a wrapper, and a machine that beeps. There has never been less reason to worry, and never been a worse place to find that out, because the routine cannot read the room. And it costs you. In a large international survey of people who fear needles, around half said they had avoided having blood drawn. A third or so had avoided a vaccination. That is the truly modern injury here, not the needle. The reflex that may once have kept someone alive now stands quietly between you and the appointment that would keep you alive. So here is the permission. Fainting is not a failure of nerve. It is a change in blood pressure, which makes it a plumbing event, not a character event. Nobody chooses to become pale, and no amount of being brave about it raises a heart rate that has decided to fall. And this particular fear happens to be one of the most treatable things in the entire catalog. There is a technique built specifically for it, called applied tension, developed by the Swedish psychologist Lars Goran Est. The idea is almost rude in its simplicity. As soon as you feel the warmth in the face and the graying at the edges, you tense the large muscles of your arms, chest, and legs in short, repeated bursts, which pushes blood back up towards your head and stops the drop before it finishes. Paired with slow, gradual exposure, that is the standard treatment, and it works for most people who try it properly with a professional. Tell the person holding the needle, ask to lie down, look away, and start tensing. You are not being difficult. You are managing a very old piece of software with a known workaround, and the people in that room have seen it 1,000 times. You see the needle, and the room goes strange. Nothing weak is moving through you. It is a plan for staying alive that was written for a much more dangerous afternoon. Still filed, still funded, still arriving on time. About 40,000 years too late to be useful.
You lift the carton to your face, and you smell it before your mind can even form the word. Sour. Wrong. Your head pulls back on its own, your nose wrinkles, your upper lip climbs toward it, and something at the very back of your throat tightens like a small door swinging shut. You didn't decide to do any of that. By the time you thought the word spoiled, your body had already finished the sentence for you. Now step back from the kitchen. Step back past this apartment, past the refrigerator humming behind you, past every clean and sealed and labeled thing in the room. Step back far enough that the fridge disappears and the shops disappear, and you are standing on open ground under a wide sky, with nothing to keep your food or your water or your body safe, except the senses you were born with. You have been taught to treat that little flinch as nothing. to call it being squeamish, picky, dramatic, too sensitive. You apologize for gagging at the drain, for looking away when someone describes a wound, for the way your whole face folds when a friend tells the story of the thing that had gone bad. Somewhere along the way, you learned that disgust is a weakness, a fussiness, a thing that stronger people simply don't feel. But that flinch is one of the oldest guardians you carry. It is older than language, older than farming, older than the very idea of a kitchen. And the thing it was built to protect you from is something your ancestors never once saw with their own eyes. Hold on to that, because it is the whole secret of this feeling. For almost the entire human story, the deadliest thing in the world was invisible, and disgust was the only sense that could point straight at it. But how can a feeling protect you from something you can never see? More than 150 years ago, a naturalist named Charles Darwin sat and studied the exact face you just made. He noticed something strange about it. It looked the same on people who had never met, who had grown up oceans apart and shared no language at all. The wrinkled nose, the lifted lip, the head turning away, sometimes the tongue pushing out as if to spit invisible food from the mouth. No one had taught them that face. It was already there, the same shape, appearing at the same kind of thing everywhere he looked. And that scrunched, narrowed face is not only an opinion your features are announcing. When researchers measured what the disgust expression actually does to the body, they found that it seals you. It narrows the eyes, it lowers how much air moves through the nose, it shrinks the world you take in. Compare it to fear, which throws the eyes wide and flares the nostrils to pull the whole threatening world in closer. Two ancient faces, one that opens the body to see the danger, and one that closes the body against it. Disgust is the face that shuts the doors. But what could be dangerous enough that your body evolved to face just to seal itself against it? A researcher named Paul Rosen spent much of his life on that question. He found that disgust follows a rule so strange it almost sounds like magic. Drop a single dead, sterilized insect into a glass of juice, then lift it back out, and you will not drink the juice, even though you truly know that nothing harmful is left in it. Shape a piece of clean fudge like something foul, and your hand will not bring it to your mouth, though you watched it made from a fresh block. Rosen called this the law of contagion. Once two things have touched, a part of one stays in the other, forever. To a mind that has never heard the word germ, that rule is almost a perfect defense. The thing that touched the rotten thing now carries the rot. Then a scientist named Valerie Curtis asked what all of it was for, and gathered reactions from many thousands of people across the world. The things that disgusted them most were not scattered or random, they clustered tightly. Bodily waste, rotting flesh, oozing sores, swarming insects, the smell and sight of sickness on another person's body. Which is to say, the precise signatures of things that carry infection. Disgust, she argued, is a disease avoidance system wearing the costume of an emotion. And there is a name for the larger machine it belongs to. Before your blood ever learns to fight an invader, there is a faster and far cheaper defense. Simply never touch the thing at all. A researcher named Mark Schaller called this the behavioral immune system, a set of reactions, with disgust at its very center, that reads the surface of the world and yanks you backward before a single unseen thing can get inside. Your biological immune system is the soldier who fights once the enemy is already through the gate. Disgust is the wall, built long before the war. So stand back on that open ground for a moment and let it be real. There is meat from a kill 2 days old, and you are hungry, the deep, aching hunger that has no refrigerator to end it. One of your band leans in, too starving to care, and eats. You lean in too, and your nose catches something underneath the smell of food, something Swedish and wrong, and your whole body recoils and turns you away, still hungry, into the dark. For a few days, it looks as though hunger was the wiser choice. But by the next moon, the one who ate is bent double and burning and then gone, and you, the one who could not stand the smell, are still walking, still breathing, still alive to have children who inherit that same easily offended nose. Now multiply that single night by 10,000 generations. Every one of your ancestors won that quiet gamble enough times to live and pass it on. You are the descendant of the ones who flinched. And if disgust truly is a shield against disease, then it should grow strongest at the exact moment the body is most defenseless, shouldn't it? It does. A researcher named Daniel Fessler found that disgust tends to rise sharply in the early weeks of pregnancy, the very window when a woman's immune system quiets itself to protect the new life taking hold, and the tiny growing body is most fragile. The inner guard is lowered, and so the outer guard, the disgust, is raised to cover it. Here's the twist, though, the thing that turns this from a story about spoiled meat into a story about you. What if the smell was never the point at all? Disgust was never really about the smell. The smell is only the easiest clue. What the feeling is actually chasing is something you cannot see: the contamination, the contact, the unseen thing that spreads from one body to the next. That is why it obeys the strange rule of contagion, and why it can be set off by things that carry no germ at all: a photograph, a sentence, a single word spoken across a table. And a machine this powerful, once it exists, does not stay politely in the kitchen. It climbs upward, into the way you judge people and ideas and each other. Have you ever noticed how easily that word travels? Listen to the words you already use: a rotten person, a sick joke, a dirty deal. That makes me want to throw up. You never chose to speak that way. The oldest disease language inside you simply reaches for the nearest wrong thing and names it unclean. Researchers have watched that same recoil, the same folded face, aim itself not at bad food, but at people a group has decided to treat as impure. That is the long shadow of this gift. The wall that kept your ancestors alive can be pointed, and history is heavy with the harm done when one kind of person is taught to find another kind disgusting. The wall does not stop to ask what it is shutting out. Now come back, all the way back, to the clean and quiet room. Almost everything your disgust was built to fight is gone from it. The water is filtered, the meat is chilled, the wound is dressed by someone wearing gloves. But the guard does not know that the war is over. So where does all that ancient vigilance go in a world scrubbed this clean? It still stands at its full and ancient height, and so it fires at the mild and the harmless, the coworker's lunch 2 desks away, the texture of a food you've simply never tried, the small ick that quietly ends something good before it can begin. And because so little truly dangerous is left for it to find, the old alarm goes searching at strangers, at differences, at anything at all that happens to pattern match to wrong. So the next time your face folds and you feel that flush of embarrassment, understand what is really happening in you. It is not weakness. It is not you being delicate or dramatic or too much. It is a caretaker that has kept your line unbroken since before your species had a name, doing the single job it has ever known, trying with everything it has to keep something out of you. You are allowed to thank it, and you are allowed, gently, to question it too, because a guardian this old cannot always tell a true threat from a stranger who merely looks unfamiliar. Feeling the flinch is simply human. What you decide to do after it, that part has always been yours. So lift the curtain one more time. Smell the sourness and feel your head pull back before you have chosen to. That small, involuntary flinch is not a flaw in you. It is 2 million years of the invisible dead, still warning you through a nose that has never once seen the thing it fears. Read the next word slowly and notice your own jaw. Yawn. Somewhere behind your back teeth, a small muscle just leaned toward it. Maybe your mouth stayed shut, maybe it didn't. Either way, some part of you just answered a word on a screen, a word that is not tired, is not a person, is not even a sound. You are one of 8 billion people carrying this reflex, and you are very far from the first to carry it. A dog does it, a chimpanzee does it, a wolf does it. The machinery under it is so old that it was already running in animals long before the first dinosaur ever walked. And yet here you are, a modern adult who believes most of the time that you are the one in charge, that your body is yours, that you decide when your own mouth opens. Then a stranger on a screen tips their head back and stretches their jaw, and your throat rises to follow, and nobody stopped to ask you first. That should feel like a small, silly thing. It isn't, because a caught yawn is not really about being tired at all. It is a signal, And the question of whose yawns you catch and whose you don't quietly points at something you would probably never say about yourself out loud. Hold on to that until the end. Start with the yawn alone before it ever spreads. You were taught, almost certainly, that you yawn to get oxygen, that the room has gone stuffy, your blood is running low on air, and one big pull tops you back up. It is a tidy story. It is also wrong. When researchers gave people extra oxygen to breathe, they did not yawn any less. When they loaded the air with carbon dioxide, they did not yawn any more. The yawn calmly ignored the one thing it was supposed to be there to fix. And still, 100 years later, we keep repeating the oxygen story to each other, because a wrong answer we understand is more comfortable than a right one we don't. So what is it actually doing? The leading answer today is stranger and more interesting. A yawn may be a way of cooling your brain. Your brain is a small, hot engine, and it works best inside a narrow band of temperature. When it drifts too warm, at the sagging edges of sleep, in a stale room, in the flat gray middle of boredom, something has to pull it back. And a yawn is a beautifully violent little act. The jaw cranks wide and floods the face with blood. The lungs drag in a long draft of cooler outside air. For a moment, your whole head becomes a radiator, throwing off heat. Researchers found that people yawn less when a cool pack is pressed to their forehead, and that yawning even rises and falls with the seasons. The yawn is not chasing air, it is chasing temperature. Which reframes the whole thing. A yawn is a reset. It is your body reaching for a lever to change its own state, to drag you up toward alertness or to settle you down toward sleep. That is why they cluster at the seams of your day, waking, tiring, bored, nervous, right at the edges where one state tips over into the next. So why would a private little reset button be catching? Because this is the part that should stop you. You do not even have to see a yawn to catch one. You can hear it in the dark. You can read the word on a page. You can simply think about it for too long, which by now you have. One of the researchers who spent his whole life on this found that most people, asked only to sit and think about yawning, began to yawn within minutes. It leaks through you at the lightest touch. Somewhere between 4 and 6 of every 10 people are wide open to it. And here's the clue that changes everything. This catching is not the same thing as the yawn. It is a second layer laid on top, and it only shows up in certain kinds of animals. The solitary ones don't have it. A tortoise, alone in its shell, yawns and never once catches yours back. But the social animals catch it constantly. Chimpanzees, wolves, dogs, some birds, and you. It even leaps between species. A dog will catch a yawn from the human it lives with, and catch it more often from the human it loves than from a stranger kneeling in front of it. Whatever this thing is, it rides on closeness, and it barely notices the boundary between one animal and the next. So picture the group it was built for. The light is going. A small band is gathered low to the ground as the day burns out, the fire not yet more than embers, the plain around them softening into dark. One of them yawns, a long, unhurried thing. The one beside her feels it move through her own jaw a moment later, and yawns too. Then the next. No one says a word. The yawn travels down the line like a message with no sender, and one by one their guards come down together, their bodies agreeing, without a single decision being made, that the day is over and it is safe now to let go. They are not a heap of separate animals. For that moment, they are one nervous system, breathing itself down toward sleep in unison. It works the other way in daylight too. One of them jerks up from a doze and yawns, and the yawn ripples outward through the circle, and a drowsy ring of bodies sharpens by a single degree, the whole group pulling its own alertness back up together, before any one of them could tell you why. That is what the reflex is for. It is a way of keeping a group in step, of syncing when to rest and when to rise, so the band moves and settles as one body instead of 30 arguing ones. And now the part I asked you to hold. Who do you catch it from? Not everyone equally. When researchers measured it carefully, the yawn turned out to travel along the lines of the heart. Strangers pass it to you weakly, acquaintances a little more, friends and family most of all. The closer the bond, the more helplessly the yawn jumps the gap. It maps roughly onto how near a person already is to you. And it arrives on schedule in a child's life at around 4 or 5 years old, the very age when a child first grasps that other people have their own separate minds, their own weather moving behind their own eyes. Where reading other people runs harder, the catching tends to run weaker too. Scientists still argue about exactly what that means, whether the caught yawn measures deep empathy or something plainer, like how closely you happen to be watching another face. But the shape of it is hard to unsee. The reflex you feel faintly embarrassed by, the one that hijacks your mouth in the middle of a meeting, is tangled up in the same wiring you use to feel your way into another person. It is closeness made visible for half a second in muscle. So come back to your own face at your own desk. You scroll alone. You spend a great deal of your life behaving as though you were a sealed unit, one person behind one set of eyes, running your own private thoughts inside your own private skull. And there is a particular modern loneliness that comes with living that way, a quiet certainty that you are on your own in there. That certainty is new. Your body never agreed to it. So what is that yawn actually reaching for? Because your body still runs the older program, the one that never believed you were sealed off at all, the one that treats you as a single node inside something much larger, and that when the node beside you lowers its guard, quietly lowers yours to match. You yawned at a stranger on a screen a few minutes ago for one reason. Uncounted generations of your ancestors survived precisely because they were that permeable to one another, that easily tuned, that ready to move as one. So the next time it climbs your throat because somebody across the room started it, in the meeting, on the late train, from the person you love at the far end of the couch, you do not have to fight it, and you certainly do not have to feel foolish. That helpless little pull is one of the oldest pieces of evidence you carry that you were never built to be alone in there. Does that really sound like a weakness to you? It is the body remembering the shape of its group and reaching without asking your permission for the rest of us. And if a single written word made you yawn a few minutes ago, that was not your body slipping loose of your control. That was your body doing the one thing it has always known how to do: feel another of its kind nearby and lean quietly toward the warmth of the group.